This question asks us to determine which of these name formula pairs is incorrect. So that means that all of them are correct except for one. I'm not going to work through every single one of these. I'm just going to work through a couple of them, and hopefully, well, and then I'll let you do the rest, and hopefully you can figure it out. So the first things first, let's go ahead and pick one of them. I'll go ahead and do B because it looks like it could be challenging. Let's see if we can figure out what this molecule is, and this, by the way, is a number 3. I'll write it a little bit more clearly. SO3 is a polyatomic anion. It is not one of the ones that I require you to memorize, but its name is sulfite. Now, if you couldn't do that on a homework assignment, for example, I would let you, my students, you can just Google it on the internet or something like that. I will not put sulfite on an exam. At least I don't think so. I hope not. Anyway, so this thing is called sulfite, and sulfite, SO3, sulfite also happens to have a negative 2 charge. So let's keep that in mind here. So I've got a negative 2 charge on this sulfite, and there are 3 of them. What does that make iron's charge? Okay, well, what I've got is I've got 3 individual sulfites, each of which has a negative 2 charge. So the total negative charge we're talking about is equal to negative 6 combined. So I've got 2 irons, and those 2 irons together have to equal a plus 6 charge in order to counteract that negative 6 charge. Does that make sense? So what does the overall charge of each of those individual irons have to be? Since there are 2 of them and combined they have to equal plus 6, that means that each of them individually is plus 3. So this is iron 3 sulfite. That is the correct name for that substance or that formula. Hopefully you're okay with that. Let's take a look down at this one just because it's a little bit different. Iron and with an S. Now S is not a sulfite, and it's not this SO4 thing. That's sulfate. Sulfate happens to be one of the polyatomic anions I require you to memorize. S is a sulfur atom all by itself. What do we call a sulfur atom when it becomes an anion in an ionic compound? We call that sulfide. So remember, when we're dealing with anions that are over there on the right side of the periodic table, we generally put, if they're elements all by themselves, we generally put the suffix "ide" at the end of them. For example, fluoride, chloride, bromide, oxide, if I had oxygen as an anion in an ionic compound, and sulfide as well. So this is sulfide. What charge would we expect a sulfide to have? Well, sulfur is 2 columns away from the nearest noble gas, which means it's going to want to take 2 electrons to feel like that noble gas, so it's going to have a negative 2 charge. And we have to identify that, of course, because iron, which is the cation in all of these substances, is one of those metals that is not in columns 1 or 2 of the periodic table, and therefore can potentially exist as having multiple different charges, plus 2 or plus 3 or plus 4 or plus 1 or plus something, depending on what anion it's bonded to. So iron here must therefore have a plus 2 charge in order to counteract the negative 2 charge on this sulfide. So the correct name for this compound would be iron, Roman numeral 2, sulfide, and indeed that is also the correct name for this formula. I'll let you do the remaining ones on your own and see if you can determine which of these is wrong and is therefore right, because the question is asking me which of these is wrong. Anyway.